Welcome to the Calder Farmstead.
Now the Ice Hogs back out to center in transition. Carlson with Quenneville 2-on-1. Right when Carlson comes, Quenneville scores!
Here's a chance for Perrin. He scores! Off the face-off! Up it's Eminger. Pulled back to Werenski. Has it. Shoots one. Bounces off a man. 5 seconds left. Werenski. Another jam on the shot. Turning and firing. They go! They score! They score! Now they catch each other and they both go right over the top. Matching rights to one another. McDermott gets the helmet off of Cassie.
And now, with 9 minutes gone in overtime, the Bears breaking out right side with Bear. Looks like cutting to the net. Bear will go score!
And here are your hosts, Cece and Sean.
Hello and greetings from the mile-high city of Denver, Colorado.
And Hermosa Beach, California.
Oh, welcome to the Calder Farmstead podcast, episode number 5 for Monday, February 1st, 2021. My goodness, January's already over. And hey, if you were hoping for a podcast featuring fertilizer techniques, we are not going to be very much help. This is an American Hockey League podcast, and my name is CC Hockley.
And I'm Sean O'Brien.
Thanks for tuning in with us.
If you're new to hearing CC and I talk about hockey, we're going to break down some AHL hockey for you. We both watch a lot of games, and we're going to talk about what we see when we watch the games, as well as use some advanced stats to help us break it down. If that's new to you, you may want to head over to our podcast feed or channel, wherever you're listening to us from, and check out episode 0. It's a 20-minute primer on some of the stats we're going to be talking about. So if you're new to some of the more advanced hockey stats terms, check that out, and you'll be able to better pick up what we're putting down. I promise it isn't that nerdy or technical, and it's only 20 minutes.
And before we get to previewing some teams in the Frenemies division, as we'll call the Central, we do have some updates to our previews that have already been done, and we got to go over those because 2 big signings significantly shift things. These kind of updates are inevitable as teams continue to add pieces after we've recorded. So let's do a little housekeeping here. First, let's talk about Lehigh Valley. The Phantoms signed Garrett Wilson and Chris Mueller late last week after we recorded, of course. And so, Sean, how do they change the outlook for Lehigh Valley this coming season?
It's funny because I actually mentioned in the preview how much better I would feel about Lehigh Valley if they went out and added a veteran forward or two that's maybe more of a proven scorer. And that's exactly what they did. I wish I could take credit for that, but we did not get the episode out before they made that signing.
No.
So we could just end up getting scooped there. But it definitely raises the floor of the worst case scenario a lot, in my opinion. We originally said that worst case was a 33-point season this year, and 2 big veteran additions to the roster raises that to the 36-37 range for me. The model added 2 points to their total projection, giving them 42 for what the model believes is happening, which I agree with as most likely, but I still think it's a little on the conservative side, but not so much where I'm willing to take the over on what the model says. The best case, I think, shifts them a bit into the 45-point range. Not a big move, but I think the additions speak more to raising the floor than raising the ceiling on the range of outcomes for the Phantoms this season.
Gotcha. And to wrap up the updates, we also had another signing, the Ontario Reign, which was our first episode along with the Henderson Silver Knights. They went out and picked up one of the veteran defensemen out there in Cameron Gauntz. How does that shift things for the Reign?
Well, just like with Lehigh Valley, I think that this raises the floor way more than anything else. Gauntz is a guy who brings a solid number 1, but I already liked a lot of their defensive depth. I think this is going to put guys who were still okay to be in those kind of middle 6, bottom 6 roles in the AHL, and it shifts them back a little bit, which is still good. You always want to have as many layers of depth as you possibly can. And yes, adding a pretty certifiable number 1 defenseman in the AHL to your roster is always going to do you good things. I also think it's important because Gauntz isn't going anywhere if the OHL and the WHL get their acts together and have a season. And I don't really think Los Angeles comes calling for him, which is a shame, but it is what it is. We had their worst case scenario as a 38-point finish, which is a 68-point pace. I think that gets a small boost up to a 71-point pace in a normal season, which is about a 40-point finish this season. The model still doesn't like them very much as it rates a lot of their young guns, including several members of the Black and Silver Bandits, much lower than I think they personally deserve to be. However, I do think the most likely scenario is still in the 44 to 46 point range, which is about an 80-point season in normal times. Remember, the Pacific Division in normal times only plays significantly less games than the rest of the divisions. But the Pacific Division is also still, in my estimation, and the models too, that's the biggest and most heavily loaded division in the AHL right now, top to bottom. So while that Gaunt signing moves the needle for them, it's still going to be a division that has closely contested games night in and night out.
Yeah, as per usual in the Pacific for sure. So Lehigh Valley gets a little bit of a bump with their signings. Ontario gets a little bit of a bump with the Gaunt's defensive men signing. And I think that's enough housekeeping. Let's mess with Texas. This episode is called Texas Toast. And the reason being is because we will be covering the Texas Stars, the current AHL affiliate for the Dallas Stars, and the Iowa Wild. And Iowa used to be the market that had the Iowa Stars, which was the AHL affiliate for Dallas. So Texas Toast. There you go. So let's start with the Texas Stars. Head coach Neil Graham entering his first full season with the club. He took over for the Texas Stars in January 2020 when Jim Montgomery was let go in Dallas. And Texas head coach Derek Laxdal ascended to assistant coach there for the Dallas Stars. So Neil Graham took over. This will be his first season, like I said, with an asterisk there, first plus season with Texas. 2019-20 regular season record is 27, 28, 3-4, sixth place in the Central Division last season out of 8 teams. Not too good, but anyway, moving on. Affiliation, like I mentioned, is with the Dallas Stars. Their ECHL affiliate, the Idaho Steelheads, are taking the season off. And so it's just going to be Dallas and an NHL affiliation for 2021. 38 games scheduled. Texas, a bit of an oddity in the Central Division. They actually have more Pacific Division foes than they do Central Division. They play Colorado 8 times, they play San Jose 6 times, and they play Tucson 6 times. The only Central Division opponents that they have are Cleveland, who they also play 6 times, and Iowa, who they play 12 times. So even more fitting with the Texas and Iowa combination episode that we're doing. They play each other 12 times in 2021. So that's your introduction for Texas. And let's talk about the forwards core for the Stars. Wow. The roster turnover here from last season it's just eye-opening. So 6 of the top scoring 7 forwards from last season's team, they are gone. Some to the Dallas Stars like Kiviranta and Gardner, some to the taxi squad like L'Esperance. Regardless, let's talk about who is still in Texas. So Cole Schneider, he looks like the clear-cut leader of this forward group. He's been a reliable source of offense since the Sochi Olympics were a thing. Anthony Lewis, he's got some good playmaking and an upside on the power play, but he kind of fills in as a middle 6 player at the AHL level. Adam Mascarenhas, his shoulder's apparently 100% healed, but his game was looking like it regressed in his injury-shortened campaign in 2019-20. Hopefully his NHL caliber shot is still intact, but I'm not counting on Mascarenhas for more than a middle 6 level of production, because while he's had a great shot, he doesn't have the creativity or the puck skills to really be a threat with the puck. And his ability to generate offense depends a lot on line mates getting him the puck. Now on the power play, that can work out, but 5-on-5, that's a problem. Now, I don't think Josh Melnick or Derek Barash contribute any noteworthy offense. Nick Baptiste looked like a good up-and-coming AHL forward with Rochester, but that was 2018, and he hasn't looked like more than a bottom 6 guy since. Riley Tuft is a very good skater, especially for a 6'6", 230-pound guy, but that's really all he brings, as his puck skills and playmaking just don't show up consistently in game film. There are some interesting prospects on the forward side of the Stars bench this season, though. Anthony Stranges might be one of them. I say might, as the 2020 4th-round pick has smooth puck skills and seems to float on the ice when he skates, but he doesn't seem to be able to turn that production. Perhaps he'll find a way to channel that skill into actual points this season, but I think there's a good chance he just continues to frustrate coaches, unfortunately. The other interesting prospect is Riley Damanini. He's got great hockey IQ, good speed. He's a hard worker, shift in and shift out. But unfortunately, he lacks polish on his puck skills, and his size isn't ideal. I think that he could eventually be a good AHL player in the future, but I don't think he makes the leap in this short gong show of a season. Big picture here is that outside of Schneider, there aren't really any guys I can point to and say, that's a guy who can score at a first line rate. There are guys who have good individual skills, but they need others to be productive. Maybe Coach Graham finds the right line combos to make that happen, but this looks like a thin group up front, and announcing 6 forwards like they did late in the offseason, it just, Coach Graham kind of holds his cards close to the chest. I covered him for a couple seasons in Idaho, but Texas was scarily quiet in any offseason signing announcements in the offseason. So we'll see how that works out for the forwards there. Anyway, forwards down, defense up. Sean.
Yep. Let's start with the players that Stars fans know. Joseph Ciccone played 54 games for the Texas Stars last season, and well, they didn't go great. Ciccone offers basically no offensive upside, and while he skates pretty well and is physical in his own end, it's about there all really is to like in his game. He's responsible in his own zone, but he doesn't help guide that transition or really do much on the offensive side of the puck. Ben Gleason had a very down 1920 for Texas. After looking like a top offensive defenseman in 18-19, but that 18-19 is, I think, has a lot of luck element to it because he took a lot of risks with the puck in his own end that paid off in 18-19 that caught up with him in 19-20. Caused a lot of bad turnovers that led to goals against. I still see a good playmaker in him with an NHL shot, but his average skating and poor defensive zone play needs to be a focus if he wants to take the next step forward. Jared Rosberg played 2 whole games for Texas last season. He's a physical defenseman, but I don't think he has all the tools to be an impact player right now. But that's it for guys who have AHL experience in the Stars camp, which is terrifying. I think Dawson Barteau could be a good middle pair AHL defenseman. He showed poise under transition, but he's prone to making bad mistakes in his own end and lacks the physical presence for a player that by no means is undersized. Riley Shea hopefully has found the snack pantry at 6'1", because being 176 pounds at 6'1", that ain't getting it done, folks. Otherwise, he has a good hockey IQ. He makes good crisp passes on zone exits, but his skating ability really makes me question his ability to handle the change in pace in the AHL. Because if you can't skate and you struggle with skating at the lower levels of hockey or in the junior levels, the pace of the NHL is very likely to be too much for you to be able to handle and process that. Max Martin's overage season in WHL gives me some hope that he'll be able to contribute immediately. But as an overager, you're more physically developed and have more experience over most of the guys you're playing with, which is why a lot of overage season production usually doesn't translate well to the NHL levels and only somewhat so to the AHL levels. So I hope that comes with him, but I'm not holding my breath. Overall, this decor does not inspire confidence in me. Barteau could be interesting. Maybe Gleason finds his 18-19 form and cleans up some of his game at his own end. But the rest concerns me. And as Stars fans listening to this, you should probably be a little concerned too.
Yeah. And forwards, defense, concerning on both ends. But now we transition to the voodoo practitioners of the Texas Stars and the goaltenders. And Sean O'Brien, we did it. We've been campaigning for Thomas Scholl to get a shot in the AHL for a while now. And his career average save percentage across 99 ECHL games is .930, 93%. Hot diggity damn. He's been unquestioningly the best goaltender in the ECHL over the last 2 seasons. And he finally looks, after spending time in Slovakia earlier this season, he finally looks to be getting a legit AHL shot, which he very much deserves. And again, I covered the Steelheads for a couple seasons in Idaho there. I've seen Thomas Scholl play with my own 2 eyes in person. Definitely deserves an AHL shot. Now, does that mean that he's going to be absolutely the savior the Stars need in net this season? No, it does not. But if I were a betting man, like my good friend Sean is, I'd bet that Thomas Scholl keeps the ship afloat this season. Matt Jarusik is in the Stars camp roster coming there after a good senior season at Michigan Tech, given Colton Point's presence on the roster, despite never looking like a good pro goalie in his 41 starts across the ECHL and AHL in the Texas system. Can confirm. It doesn't look good for Jarusik's chances, unfortunately. Now, across all those 3 goaltenders are 8 combined AHL starts. Holy crow. All of which belong to Colton Point, who we've said doesn't look good. So while I like Thomas Scholl, as I've expounded on quite a bit in the introduction of the goaltending section here, the AHL is not the ECHL, and the lack of real AHL experience, in the goalie room. There's a lack of American Hockey League experience, and it's alarming to me. It's just when you have a young, not just young, but inexperienced group of goaltenders at the AHL level, it's concerning. It's disconcerting, and it's going to be a problem if you've got your forwards, your defensemen, and your goaltending room just lacking a whole lot of experience, and nothing really stands out.
Yeah, and if it sounds like we're trying to be real big downers on Texas this year, I've got nothing against Texas personally. I like the green. You know, I've really thought that they've had good teams in previous years, but there's, as we said with the forwards, there was a very large exodus of the guys that kept Texas afloat last year. And what was a year they finished? What do you say, 6th in the Central?
6th.
Yeah, they weren't that bad a team last year, but a lot of those guys that put the puck in the net for them in the forwards are gone. The defensive core looks thin, and the goaltending has 8 combined AHL starts. This is a very dicey season, but let's talk outcomes. Cece, what's the best case scenario?
Best case scenario, Cole Schneider carries a forward group that reliably chips in goals behind him. Adam Mascaren's shoulder doesn't bother him, and he scores 12 goals in this shortened season. Ben Gleason looks like the mobile offensive threat that he did in 2018, and the rest of the defense steps up into their roles admirably. Thomas Scholl looks like he's still stopping ECHL pucks, and they finish with 41 points. That is an 82-point pace in a normal season. Now, let's talk worst case scenario. Sean.
So all those questions we raised about depth, they all come home to roost. Schneider plays well, but he can't carry the offensive load himself. None of the prospects really find their stride in the 38 games, and the defense doesn't really come together as it could have. Scholl plays admirably, but can't keep the boat afloat with that many holes in it. Dallas doesn't send anyone down for long enough to change the course of the season. They finish with, in the worst case scenario, 30 points. That is a 60-point pace in a normal season, and a season that you break out the bourbon to forget for sure.
Now let's talk most likely scenario. We talked the top, the ceiling. Let's talk the bottom and the floor. Let's talk most likely scenario. The point shares model likes them for about 32 points. That's a 64-point pace in a normal season. And looking at their schedule and how good those teams are, I think they squeeze out a few more, but not many. Their depth everywhere has too many questions for me to feel good about it. Sean's brought it up. I've brought it up. It's a concern. Bring a ding, ding, ding. So they're going to be far and away the team that has to travel the most. Like I said, 3 Pacific Division opponents, only 2 in the Central. They face Iowa 12 times, but still, you're facing Colorado, you're facing San Jose, and you're facing Ontario for a number of times, I believe. I had a brain fart there and can't quite remember who their 3rd Pacific Division opponent was. Let's see here. It's actually Tucson. Colorado, San Jose, Tucson. Long and short of it, they're putting in a ton of miles. They're putting in a lot of miles. That's going to take a toll on other teams won't have as badly. I say they finish with 35 points. That's a 70-point pace in a normal season. Still not good, but definitely a whole hell of a lot more respectable. So at least there's that.
There is a best case scenario in there. Like, things could work out for them. Just, it's really hard to see that.
There's a lot that has to go right. Like there's a lot of stars, no pun intended, that have to align. So I know I started saying it. I'm like, this is not a pun. I'm not trying to make this a pun, but there's a lot of stars that have to align. All right. I'll keep my day job.
Yep. I think that is the cue in which we go to break here and pay some bills.
Yes.
Next up, we're going to talk about the Iowa Wild as CC turns in his dad joke card.
All right, let's talk about the Iowa Wild. We'll, as always, we'll begin with the forwards group, and I'll defer to my man, Sean O'Brien.
Before we get there, though, let's hear some coaches' records. How'd they do last season?
All right, here I am jumping the gun. All right, Iowa Wild. Head coach Tim Army is starting his third season with the Wild. Regular season record for 1920 was, here we go, 37, 18, 4, and 4. That's second. That was good for second place in the Central. Obviously, another juggernaut in Milwaukee was ahead of them, and they were first place. So, but Iowa put together a pretty damn good season last year. Affiliation for this year, 2021 is going to be Minnesota in the AHL, the NHL rather. Allen in the ECHL, one of the 13 teams playing currently in the former East Coast Hockey League, the Allen Americans. Game scheduled 34. They've only got 4 opponents: Chicago, Grand Rapids, Rockford, and Texas. They play Grand Rapids 4 times, Chicago 8, Rockford 10, and as we mentioned earlier, Texas Stars, they will be playing 12 times. So now that I've officially jumped the gun, reeled it in, and now casting back out to Sean for the forwards group.
So lots of forwards are missing from last year's Iowa's team. Sam Annis, not there anymore. Sam Annis, not there anymore. Gary Mayhew, he is on the taxi squad currently, and I think it's pretty likely he stays there. Kyle Rowell, same story. But let's talk about the guys that are in Iowa. Another serious knee injury forced Mason Shaw to miss almost all of last season, which makes me worried that his skating is never going to come along, as that was always a concern of mine with Mason Shaw. I like his playmaking ability. I was hoping he'd take a step forward after a very promising 18-19, but let's hope this last knee injury hasn't changed what was a promising trajectory for him. Luke Johnson is a late addition to the training camp roster, and he certainly made a good impression last season in Iowa, but I do question how much of that production was him and how much of it was just a strong supporting cast around him, raising him up. Don't get me wrong, he has shooting talent, but I don't know if I buy that he's got first-line production in him just yet, and we'll see what this season brings with a much more stripped-down cast around him. I don't think Will Bitten ever becomes a top-line AHLer, but I think he's capable of being a middle six guy with his skating and his work ethic. He was good on the PK, and I liked him in limited power play time that he got last season. While he's a decent net front presence and a good physical game, I don't think Brandon Duhaime takes the next step in becoming a top 6 AHLer this season. He still seems to struggle with pro-level puck skills like smooth pass receptions and puck control in traffic. So I don't think that in this shortened season, he's going to be one that makes a big step forward, especially kicking off a lot of rust from what is probably the longest layoff of his career. Adam Beckman could be someone to keep who makes a big impact, though, as he has a 50 cal for a shot. Absolute laser rocket. His puck skills are okay, and his skating is average-ish at best, making his shooting talent really his only trick, but it's a hell of a trick, as he's someone who has the ability to score 30 goals a season. I do like Evan Lodnia, who's got very good puck skills and can find guys with creative playmaking, but also struggles a bit with his skating. Lodnia was hurt during his time in the KHL, and his timetable for return is unknown at this point because the AHL gives out injury information like Robinhood gives out GameStop stock.
There you go.
Lodnia was first hurt. If Lodnia was a little taller, a little heavier, and a bit more physical, his skill set would be a carbon copy of Michael Shaffey. Same kind of playmaking abilities, but still struggles with skating. The same level of interest is true of Dmitry Sokolov, who put home 15 goals in 41 games last season. But again, another good forward with good offensive skills on this team whose skating kind of holds him back. Connor Dewar makes a good whiskey and has a good defensive game as a forward, but I don't think he ever consistently finds the score sheet. But the value he brings with his PK skills definitely is not nothing to the Wild and always an important aspect to have good penalty killers. And while he had a very productive final season in the OHL, Damien Giroux's production from juniors is not one I'd count on for this AHL season. I do like his hockey sense and compete level, but I think he struggles against men with his average skating and kind of undersized frame. Going from playing, 17, 18-year-olds to playing grown-ass men is a big challenge when you're a little undersized and don't skate and can't rely on skating to get around them. Tyler Sheehy comes up from the Wild camp after being an MVP caliber player in the Coast last year. I'm always a fan of giving guys who've been lights out in the Coast a shot in the A. And while he might not make the team out of camp, let alone be a high-impact player, he does deserve this shot and a chance to see if he can ply his trade at the AHL level. Overall,
go ahead.
Let's say overall, it's a group that has a lot of question marks, but there's skill level there. The one thing that concerns me, though, as a group is the number of times in which I said that guy's skating concerns me. Skating is the biggest thing that holds players back, not just from the NHL, but this is a Central Division that features some teams that can play with pace. I don't know if Iowa's going to be able to keep up with all of them, but once they get the puck in the zone, they have shooting talent.
Well, and talking about the offensive side of the puck, let's go now to the blue line. We'll talk about the defensive side of the puck and the D-man for the Iowa Wild. Now, of the returning guys to the Wild, Louis Belpedio is really the only offensive threat. I like him more for his D-zone work than his offensive zone skills. And don't get me wrong. Now, he has flashes of good puck skills, but more often than not, he struggles to make clean pass receptions, and he takes low percentage shots from the blue line instead of working for a better scoring chance. McCoshen and Warner are big and physical, but they don't skate well, and they don't leave the blue line in the O-zone. Josh Atkinson and Keaton Thompson, they're more mobile than McCoshen and Warner, but none of the four are going to generate any offense or make moves in transition. Now, of the four, I think McCoshen makes the most sense to pair with budding star Kalen Addison. And while I think that there could be some issues with Addison's first season against men, grown-ass men, the story of the season this year, a bunch of young kids against grown-ass men. Now, Addison, I think he definitely has the skating and the puck skills you want from a future NHL defenseman. I think he has a good shot to be a star with the Iowa Wild along the blue line this season. Fedor Gordiev. Sorry, got stumbled on that a little bit. Fedor Gordiev took a big step forward in the last season in juniors. He has a lot of good physical attributes in his power and his skating, and it flashes some puck skills, but I question how much his offense translates to the AHL. Now, overall, this is a group that should be led by Addison and will depend largely on forwards to generate offense. They may be a physical bunch overall, but skill-wise, there's a good bit to be desired.
All right, we talked skaters. Let's talk voodoo. Hunter Jones is the goalie I like a lot. If he could be a little more consistent. He had some great games in the OHL mixed in with a lot of really questionable ones. He's a smart goalie, but doesn't have the athleticism that's required to make those flashy post-to-post saves and has to rely more on being able to read the play and make correct reads and technical framework than he does raw athleticism. Derek Baribeau looked good in his short stint in the ECHL last season and then looked bad in his even shorter stint in Iowa last season. Yeah. Neither are a big enough sample for me to really feel like I can draw meaningful conclusions of, but his junior career doesn't really make me optimistic that he's ready for AHL shooters yet. So between him and Hunter Jones, not feeling great about this group. I would think that Jones is more likely to be an AHL caliber starter in the future. I don't know about this upcoming season, though. But let's talk outcomes.
Yeah, let's do that.
So let's be positive up front here. Best case scenario. There simply is no replacing the production from Annis, Mayhew, Mennel, and Rao. Guys like Johnson and Belpedio can keep the ship afloat should the kids not be as productive as we all hope. The biggest thing playing in the Iowa favor is the divisional schedule, and they're situated in a division where outside the Wolves, the other teams should, even though we've kind of given some grief to Iowa, the other teams are very much in that boat with them outside of Chicago, who's loaded.
Yeah.
So should goaltending work out and the forward depth fill in well? Should Kalen Addison be a big part of moving pucks from his own end and generating offense from the blue line? They finish with 41 points. That's a 92-point pace in a regular season. Thank you, scheduling.
That's the name of the game this year, is scheduling, for sure. Best case scenario, Sean just covered. Let's talk worst case scenario. So worst case, Jones and Baribeau never find their rhythm in the AHL, and Mason Shaw never seems to fully recover from that injury. Ivan Lodnia never makes it to the ice, and depth scoring from Sokolov and Dewar just never really arrives. The defense struggles to pitch in, but still manages to keep their defensive end in decent enough shape. But they finish with 35 points, which is a 78-point season in normal times. Not the worst, but not a great one. Just kind of right in the middle of the road there.
Now let's talk most likely. Now, the wins could shift a lot here, as neither I nor the model are huge fans of the roster, but I like it better than most in the division. Now, I say the wins could shift a lot of this outlook because if other teams in the division pick up a good score, like we talked about Lehigh Valley doing and Ontario picking up a solid defenseman, or one of them gets a couple of nice gifts from their NHL taxi squad, a lot of that can change in a hurry if Iowa doesn't kind of keep pace with those teams. All things said, though, the model has them at 40 points, which is an 89-point pace. I'm going to take the slight under on that and say 38 points, which is an 85-point pace in a normal 76-game regular season.
Well, there you have it. Iowa, unfortunately, also doesn't have goaltender Capo Kakkonen. Yeah, he's getting some NHL starts this year. Just kind of as a sidebar before we wrap up, Sean, what do you think of Kakkonen up in the NHL with Minnesota?
I would be shocked if he comes back to Iowa ever again. Like, he has not looked great at times,
right? But
he has looked good enough where I don't think he comes back when Stalock gets healthy, and going into the seasons in the future, I don't think he's coming back. I think he's going to be in Minnesota, if not as a kind of platoon 1B, as someone they hope to coach up a little bit and get him to be a pretty good starter in the NHL level. I don't think he has a career as a top 10 starter in the NHL, but like a number 12 starter in the NHL, 15, that seems about where I would put him based on what I've seen from him so far. But I don't think he comes back to the AHL unless it's, years and years down the road where he's, a little older and a little more seasoned, got some gray in the beard going, and he's, here to train him up some kids that he, that he mentors. But I think his AHL days are done.
Yeah. Yep. Especially with Devin Dubnyk getting, over in San Jose now, and upgrade from Dubnyk.
Everyone's an upgrade from Devin Dubnyk. And then I love that San Jose signed him and was like, this is a good thing. Did you see Devin Dubnyk in front of one of the best defensive teams in Minnesota last year? He was terrible. He lit up the highest percentage of low danger goals in the NHL. And then he went to San Jose, where they don't even have low danger chances. They're all just defensive fire wagon. Like, that was such a stupid move. But I'm not a big fan of the Wild's goaltending depth as an organization as it is.
Right.
So the fact that Kakkonen has looked even reasonable in his starts, it definitely solidifies to me that like he ain't coming back. I'd be so surprised if Minnesota sent him back.
Yeah, agree with that 100% for sure.
All right, so that's it for our show. If you guys are enjoying the show, please make sure you subscribe so you get episodes in a timely fashion. Also, please feel free to rate and review the podcast wherever you're listening to it from, or if you're watching on YouTube, like the video and comment what you thought of the episode. Doing so helps others find the show, and your reviews help us improve it. You can also follow the show on social media at Calder Farmstead on Twitter, at the Calder Farmstead on Instagram and Facebook. Links to all of that and more can be found in our link tree, which is scrolling beneath our YouTube video here, or you can just go to linktr.ee/the Calder Farmstead.
And my name is CC Hockley. The Calder Farmstead is part of the Full Press Radio Network. Check out this and many more hockey and overall sports podcasts at www.fullpresscoverage.com. You can find me representing Full Press Hockey on Twitter at FPC_AHL, and at my personal Twitter account. I cover all sorts of different things, but hockey's my main thing, at CCHawk. That's SEESEEHAWK. And of course, check out my writing at Full Press Hockey as well at www.fullpresshockey.com. Sean.
I'm Sean O'Brien. You can follow me on Twitter at Sean O'Brien81. That's SeanoBrien81. I'm also on Instagram at Sean O'Brien _81. Both of those accounts are my personal ones. So along with some hockey things mixed in, you'll get pop culture takes, random memes, that kind of thing. You can find my stats work at Tableau at bit.ly/data-dump-and-chase, all lowercase, all one word. And a big thanks to Adrian Drake, who made our theme music. You can find him on social media at AD_dysfunction, DYSFUNCTION.
And that'll do it for episode number 5 of the Calder Farmstead podcast. And hang with us. We got less than a week until the AHL season begins. And we'll see how the Canadian division, if they can get their stuff together and what that'll look like. And yeah, in the meantime, hang with us. We're going to keep previewing the season for the remaining teams in the league.
It's going to be a sprint to the finish for sure for these previews. So stay tuned. You're going to get them.
You're going to get them. We're going to crank them out. We're going to get them done. We're probably going to be tired as hell by the end of it, but hang with us. Thank you for tuning in. And as always, keep your stick on the ice.